A millionaire hires a fake date to save face, but she ends up saving his heart. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main characters. Ryan Anderson was a man who had everything: money, power, and influence. He had built a massive fortune, climbing to the top of his industry with sheer determination and intelligence. Yet, there was one thing he couldn't buy: love. For years, Ryan's heart had been a fortress, locked away and untouched. He had surrounded himself with business meetings, fancy cars, and endless projects, but when it came to matters of the heart, he was a stranger to himself. His personal life had taken a back seat to his career. He couldn't afford to show vulnerability, not in front of anyone, especially not in the high-stakes world he inhabited. So when the pressure of an upcoming charity gala became too much to handle, he knew he had to act fast. The invitation was prestigious, and his attendance would signal to the elite of the city that Ryan Anderson was still a key player in both business and society. But there was a problem. The event required a +1, and Ryan couldn't show up alone. Not again. His previous failed relationships had become public gossip, and he couldn't bear to be the subject of more whispered judgments. That's when he heard about the service, a company specializing in providing date companions for wealthy clients. It sounded simple enough. Hire a beautiful woman to play the part, attend a gala with him, and keep up the appearance of the perfect couple. No strings attached. The idea seemed perfect. It was a temporary fix for a temporary problem. So, Ryan made the call. Emily Parker was the woman hired to be Ryan's date for the evening. She had been through her own struggles, trying to find stability and success in a city where dreams often came with a hefty price tag. Emily wasn't thrilled about the idea of being a hired companion, but when she received the call for a high-paying gig, she couldn't say no. She wasn't living the glamorous life Ryan did, but she had her own charm and confidence. When she showed up to meet him before the gala, she was surprised to find a man who didn't fit the cold, distant billionaire stereotype she had expected. Ryan was polite, yet clearly uncomfortable. He wasn't used to pretending, not like she was. For Emily, playing the part of a girlfriend for an evening wasn't much different than acting in a theater production. But for Ryan, this was all new. He had never felt so exposed. The evening unfolded with surprising ease. As they mingled among the city's elite, Ryan and Emily played their roles perfectly. The more time they spent together, the more Emily realized that behind his polished exterior, Ryan wasn't just a wealthy businessman. He was a man who had been let down by love and life. And as the evening progressed, something unexpected happened. For the first time in a long time, Ryan didn't feel so alone. There was a warmth in Emily's presence, a sincerity that made him question everything he thought he knew about himself. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected her to affect him in such a way. But the night was far from over, and Ryan's story was only just beginning. As the evening went on, Ryan found himself growing more comfortable in Emily's presence. The gala was a blur of high-end fashion, clinking glasses, and endless chatter, but there was something about the way Emily carried herself that made him feel like he was the only person in the room. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was undeniably stunning. It was her confidence, her ease in an environment that felt so foreign to him. The longer they stayed, the more Ryan couldn't help but notice the small details. Her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke about her life, the way she made him feel like he could be himself. She wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't, and somehow, that felt like the most real thing in the world. Emily, on the other hand, was starting to see Ryan in a new light. At first, she had thought of him as just another rich guy with a problem to solve, someone who saw her as a mere accessory to his perfect image. But as they spoke more, she realized there was more to him than the polished exterior. Ryan wasn't just a billionaire businessman. He was a man with vulnerabilities, someone who had been hurt in the past, and was now just trying to protect himself from getting hurt again. They found themselves talking about things neither of them had expected. Ryan, for once, let his guard down. He shared stories of his childhood, his failed relationships, and the pressures he faced every day to maintain the perfect image. Emily listened intently, offering words of comfort when needed, but she never pushed him. She let him speak at his own pace, respecting his boundaries, but also showing him that there was someone there who wasn't interested in his wealth or status. Just him, the person. It was a strange sensation for Ryan, feeling so understood by someone who was, in essence, a stranger. But he found it oddly comforting. As the night wore on, he realized he had almost forgotten they were playing a role. Emily was no longer just a hired companion. She was someone he genuinely enjoyed being around, someone who made him laugh, someone who made him feel seen. When the gala finally came to a close, Ryan found himself reluctant to leave her side. It had been a whirlwind evening, filled with conversations that went deeper than he ever thought possible in such a short time. As they stepped outside the venue, the cool night air hit them both, but it felt refreshing, almost like a new beginning. Ryan turned to Emily and, for the first time that evening, asked, "Would you like to grab a drink? I mean, just the two of us, no pretense." Emily hesitated for a moment. She had been hired for a job, after all, but something in Ryan's eyes told her that this was no longer about business. It was about something real. "Sure," she replied with a smile. They walked to a nearby bar, where they continued their conversation, no longer pretending to be anyone other than themselves. It felt like a breath of fresh air, and for both of them, it was a moment of honesty they hadn't experienced in a long time. As the night progressed, Ryan and Emily found themselves in a cozy corner of the bar, talking as if they had known each other for years. There was no pretense now, no roles to play. Ryan was just Ryan, and Emily was just Emily. The atmosphere was relaxed, the music playing softly in the background, but for the first time that evening, the noise of the world seemed to fade away. They laughed, shared stories, and discovered small quirks about each other that made them smile. Emily was surprised at how easy it was to talk to him. She had initially thought of him as just another wealthy businessman, detached and focused solely on his career. But now, as they spoke more intimately, she saw a different side of him, one that was kind, self-deprecating, and surprisingly vulnerable. She found herself genuinely enjoying his company. Ryan, too, was beginning to realize how much he had been missing in his life. He had always surrounded himself with people who wanted something from him, his money, his influence, his connections. But with Emily, it was different. She wasn't interested in any of that. She wasn't trying to get anything from him except his time, his attention, and his honesty. It was a refreshing change. It made him feel like he could finally breathe again. He began to open up to her in ways he hadn't with anyone else in years. He told her about his childhood, about the pressure he had felt growing up in a wealthy family, and the constant expectation to be perfect. He spoke about the failures he had experienced in his past relationships, how he had been hurt, and how it had made him build walls around his heart. Emily listened intently, offering words of comfort when needed, but never pushing him to reveal more than he was ready to share. She didn't try to fix him. She just let him talk, offering a safe space where he could be vulnerable without judgment. As the evening wore on, Ryan realized something he hadn't anticipated. He was starting to trust her. It wasn't just the shared experiences or the vulnerability they had exchanged. It was the way she made him feel accepted for who he was, not for what he could offer. He couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at him like that. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen, not as a billionaire or a business tycoon, but as a man who was worthy of love and connection. Emily, too, felt something stir within her. There was a chemistry between them that she hadn't expected. At first, she had been hired to do a job, to play a part, but now she found herself caring about Ryan more than she had anticipated. She saw the loneliness in his eyes, the way he guarded his heart, and it made her want to break through the walls he had built. But she also knew that this wasn't just a job anymore. She was no longer just the fake date. She was a woman who had started to form real feelings for him. It was confusing and a little frightening, but it was real. As they left the bar together, the night air felt a little colder, but the warmth between them was undeniable. Ryan walked Emily to her car, and as they stood there in the quiet night, he hesitated. "Thank you for tonight," he said softly, his voice sincere. "It's been different." "In a good way." Emily smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm glad," she replied, meeting his gaze. "I think we both needed this." And with that, they said goodnight. Ryan watched her drive away, feeling an unfamiliar sense of peace. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was just going through the motions of life. He felt alive, connected, and maybe, just maybe, he was starting to believe in the possibility of something more. The following week, Ryan couldn't stop thinking about Emily. What had started as a simple arrangement had turned into something far more meaningful than he could have ever expected. Every time he checked his phone, he found himself wishing there was a new message from her. He hadn't intended for it to go this way. He hadn't expected to feel this pull, this connection. But now, every conversation felt different. They started texting each other regularly, and sometimes, Ryan would even call her just to hear her voice. It wasn't about the job anymore. It was about them. Emily, too, couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Her initial reluctance to get too close had faded. There was something about Ryan's honesty, his openness, that made her want to be a part of his life in a way she hadn't anticipated. He wasn't just the rich businessman she thought he was. He was someone who genuinely cared, someone who valued the moments when they could just talk without any agenda. She hadn't felt this kind of connection in a long time. Despite the initial professional boundaries, Emily found herself thinking about Ryan in ways she hadn't planned. It wasn't just the charm or the wealth that drew her in. It was the man behind the persona. She started to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than she had been settling for. A few days later, Ryan invited Emily out to dinner. It wasn't a business dinner, and it wasn't a continuation of their contract. It was just the two of them getting to know each other outside the confines of the event they had attended. Emily had always kept her guard up when it came to men, especially wealthy ones. She had seen too many who were interested only in her looks or her ability to blend into their world. But Ryan was different. He listened, truly listened to her, and that was something she wasn't used to. They chose a quiet Italian restaurant, far from the noise of the city. It felt intimate, but not in an overwhelming way. Ryan sat across from her, his eyes focused entirely on her as they spoke about their lives, their dreams, and their challenges. Emily found herself opening up more than she had planned. She told him about her struggles with her family, her dreams of opening her own art gallery, and how difficult it had been to carve out a space for herself in a world that often felt indifferent. Ryan listened, his expression thoughtful, before sharing some of his own aspirations. He told her how he had once dreamed of being a writer, of telling stories that mattered, but life had pulled him in a different direction. He shared his frustrations with his career, the pressures of being a public figure, and how he often wondered if he had sacrificed his happiness for success. As the evening went on, Emily felt a warmth growing inside her, not just from the food or the wine, but from the real connection they were building. She realized how rare it was to meet someone who understood her on this level, someone who didn't judge her for her ambitions or her mistakes. When they finished their meal, Ryan offered to walk her home. It was a simple gesture, but one that made Emily feel cherished, something she hadn't felt in a long time. They strolled through the quiet streets, the city lights casting soft shadows around them. When they reached her apartment building, Ryan paused, turning to face her. "I'm really glad we did this," he said softly. Emily smiled, feeling a flutter in her chest. "Me too," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As they said their goodbyes, Ryan's hand brushed against hers, lingering for a moment longer than usual. For Emily, it was a moment that marked the beginning of something new, something real. She wasn't sure where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she was willing to find out. As the weeks passed, Ryan and Emily's connection grew stronger. What had started as a simple arrangement had turned into something much deeper, and both of them found themselves caught in a situation neither had anticipated. They spent more time together outside of the original context. Dinner dates, walks in the park, long phone calls in the evening. Each moment felt more real than the last. Ryan had never been one to let his guard down easily, But with Emily, it seemed effortless. She made him feel seen in a way that he hadn't experienced in years. There was something about her presence that allowed him to breathe, to feel like he could finally be himself without the weight of expectations on his shoulders. He had gotten used to the high-powered, fast-paced world of business, but with Emily, he found solace in the quiet moments. She made him laugh in ways he hadn't thought possible, and she challenged him to think about life differently. For the first time in a long time, he started questioning his choices, his priorities. Emily, too, was beginning to see Ryan in a new light. She had always been cautious about getting too close to someone, especially someone as successful and wealthy as Ryan. She had seen her fair share of men who wanted nothing more than to keep her around for their own gain. But Ryan was different. He didn't expect anything from her. He valued her thoughts, her opinions, and most of all, her company. It was a refreshing change. The more she got to know him, the more she realized that there was so much more to him than the billionaire businessman that everyone else saw. He had vulnerabilities, dreams, and fears just like anyone else. She began to care for him in a way she hadn't planned. It wasn't just about the connection they shared. It was about the person he was beneath the surface. They were both in uncharted territory, navigating emotions neither of them had planned to feel. One evening, as they sat on a bench in the park, Ryan turned to Emily with a serious look in his eyes. "There's something I've been meaning to say," he began, his voice soft but steady. Emily looked at him, her heart skipping a beat. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know this started as a job for you, and I never meant for it to go this way," Ryan said, his expression a mixture of hesitation and vulnerability. "But the truth is, Emily, I can't stop thinking about you. I don't want this to be just a casual thing anymore. I want to be with you. Not because I hired you, not because of anything else, but because I genuinely care about you." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. She had known, deep down, that something was growing between them, but hearing him say it out loud made her heart race. She had tried to keep her emotions in check, but now, in this moment, she couldn't deny what she was feeling. "Ryan," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I care about you too, more than I expected, and I've been scared to admit it, but I don't want to let you go either." There was a long pause as they both let the weight of their words settle between them. Finally, Ryan reached out, gently taking her hand in his. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. "Then let's see where this goes," he said with a smile, his eyes filled with hope. Emily smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time, she felt like they were on the same page. They weren't just two people pretending anymore. They were two people willing to take a chance on something real. As the days turned into weeks, Ryan and Emily settled into a new rhythm. Their connection deepened, and the lines between business and personal life blurred even further. Ryan, once so focused on his career, now found himself making time for Emily in a way he hadn't done for anyone in years. He would rearrange meetings, cancel appointments, just to steal a few moments with her. Emily, too, was starting to shift her focus. Her career and aspirations had always been her top priority, but Ryan's presence in her life had changed that. She found herself opening up more, not just to him, but to the idea of a future she hadn't considered before. They spent weekends exploring the city, visiting art galleries, and talking about everything under the sun, what they wanted in life, what they feared, and where they saw themselves in the future. It was a stark contrast to the guarded professional relationship they had started with. But there was a growing sense of comfort between them now, a sense of familiarity and trust. One Saturday afternoon, as they sat in a small park near Emily's apartment, Ryan turned to her with a serious look on his face. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice tentative. Emily looked at him curiously, sensing that something important was coming. "About us," Ryan continued, taking a deep breath. "I don't want you to feel like I'm rushing things, but I feel like we've reached a point where we need to talk about where we're headed. What do we want from this? From each other?" Emily was silent for a moment, processing his words. She had been feeling the same way, unsure of where their relationship was going, but afraid to bring it up. The last thing she wanted was to lose what they had. "Ryan," she finally said, her voice soft but firm, "I care about you. I care about us. But I don't want to jump into anything too quickly. We've both been through a lot, and I think we need to take our time. We can't rush something like this." Ryan nodded, his expression softening. "I know. I've never felt this way before, Emily. With you, everything feels different, and I don't want to lose that." Emily reached out and took his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "You won't lose me, Ryan, but we need to make sure we're building something real, not rushing into it because of how we feel right now. We got to take it one step at a time." Ryan looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "One step at a time sounds good to me." It wasn't the grand declaration of love either of them had imagined, but it was real. It was honest, and it was enough. Over the next few weeks, their relationship continued to evolve. They didn't have all the answers, but they knew they were on the right path. Emily continued to pursue her career. Ryan continued to focus on his business, but they did so with the understanding that they were now part of each other's lives. As they spent more time together, their connection grew stronger. And with each passing day, they both realized that they were no longer pretending. What had started as a simple arrangement had become something much deeper, something that neither of them had expected. They were no longer two people merely filling a role. They were two people discovering a love that felt as real as it was unexpected. As the months passed, Ryan and Emily's relationship continued to grow in unexpected ways. They had both made a commitment to take things slow, but their bond deepened with each passing day. They found joy in the little things, quiet dinners at home, spontaneous trips to the beach, and simple moments where they could just talk and share their dreams. Ryan had always been the type of person who was driven by success, but Emily made him realize that there was more to life than just achievements and business deals. She helped him rediscover the value of the small, everyday moments that made life meaningful. In turn, Ryan became a source of stability for Emily. She had always been independent, used to taking care of everything on her own, but with Ryan, she began to see the beauty in letting someone else in. He didn't expect her to be perfect or to have it all together. He loved her for who she was, flaws and all. It was a refreshing change. But as they grew closer, there were still moments of doubt. Emily, still cautious from her past experiences, sometimes found herself pulling back. She worried about opening up too much, about the possibility of getting hurt. Ryan noticed these moments, and though he never pushed, he could sense the hesitation in her. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Ryan's apartment, overlooking the city skyline, Emily spoke up. "Ryan, I've been thinking," she said quietly. Ryan turned his attention to her, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What is it?" he asked, his voice gentle. "I care about you. I really do," Emily began, taking a deep breath. "But I've been through a lot in my life. I've built walls around myself for so long, and it's hard to let them down. I'm scared, Ryan. I'm scared of getting hurt again." Ryan reached over and took her hand in his touch warm and reassuring. "Emily," he said softly, "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because I care about you. I understand that it's not easy to trust, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not asking you to let go of your fears overnight. I just want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what." Emily looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there. She had always prided herself on being strong and self-sufficient, but for the first time, she allowed herself to lean on someone else. "Thank you, Ryan," she whispered, feeling a wave of emotion wash over her. "I need to hear that." As the night wore on, they sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of the city humming in the background. It wasn't a grand gesture or a dramatic moment, but it was enough. Emily knew that she was beginning to trust him, that she was slowly but surely letting go of the wall she had spent so many years building. Ryan, too, knew that they still had a long way to go, but for the first time, he wasn't worried about the future. He believed in them, in what they had together. As the evening came to a close, Ryan kissed Emily on the forehead, a simple but meaningful gesture. "Good night, Emily," he said softly. "Sleep well." She smiled and kissed him back on the cheek. "Good night, Ryan. I'm glad you're here." And for the first time in a long while, Emily felt truly at peace. The journey ahead might still have its uncertainties, but for the first time, she was ready to face them, with Ryan by her side. Months passed, and with each passing day, Ryan and Emily's relationship evolved into something neither of them had expected. They had faced their fears, shared their vulnerabilities, and learned to trust each other in ways that were both beautiful and terrifying. For Emily, it had been a journey of self-discovery, of learning that it was okay to lean on someone else. She had spent so many years building walls around her heart, convinced that being strong meant doing everything on her own. But with Ryan, she began to understand that true strength wasn't about isolation. It was about allowing yourself to be open, to be loved. Ryan, too, had changed. The man who had once prioritized success above all else had begun to see that there was more to life than business meetings and financial deals. Emily had shown him the importance of connection, of being present in the moment, and of embracing the unknown. He had learned to let go of the control he had always clung to and accept the unpredictability of life and love. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of Ryan's apartment, the city lights twinkling below them, Emily turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice full of warmth, "I've been thinking about something." Ryan, who had been looking out at the skyline, turned to her, his eyes focused on her face. "What's on your mind?" he asked, sensing the seriousness in her tone. Emily paused for a moment before continuing. I think we've both changed," she said, her words deliberate, "in the best way possible. But there's still one thing I need to ask." Ryan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's that?" Emily took a deep breath. "What happens now? I mean, we've been through so much together, and I know we're stronger for it. But we're still figuring this out, aren't we?" Ryan smiled softly, his hand gently brushing against hers. "Yeah, we're still figuring it out," he agreed. "But I think that's the beauty of it, Emily. We don't need to have all the answers right now. We're learning, growing, and experiencing life together. And that's all that matters." Emily felt a surge of emotion, the weight of his words settling in her chest. She had never imagined herself in a relationship like this, not one that was so real, so full of depth. For the first time, she wasn't scared of what the future might hold. She was ready to face it, whatever it brought, as long as. Ryan was by her side. "You're right," she whispered, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "We don't need to know everything. We just need to keep moving forward together." As they sat there, their hands intertwined, the world around them seemed to fade away. The uncertainties of life were still present, but for the first time in a long while, Emily felt truly at peace. She wasn't alone anymore, and neither was Ryan. They had found something beautiful in each other, something that neither of them had expected, but both were willing to embrace. And as the night grew darker, they knew that the journey they were on was far from over. It was just beginning. The days turned into months, and Ryan and Emily's relationship continued to flourish. They had come a long way from the awkward, temporary arrangement they once had. What started as a job for Emily and a solution to Ryan's problem had transformed into something real, something deep, and something neither of them had expected. They had learned to trust each other, to open up in ways they hadn't done with anyone else. Emily's walls, built over years of past disappointments, had started to crumble piece by piece. And Ryan, the man who had once believed that success and control were the most important things in life, had learned the value of vulnerability, of letting go of his need to be perfect. They had shared their pasts, their hopes, and their fears, but there was still one thing left unsaid, something that had been lingering in the background. It was the unspoken question, what comes next? They had become inseparable, but the future was still uncertain. One evening, as they sat together on the couch in Ryan's living room, the weight of that question hung in the air. Emily glanced at Ryan, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her coffee cup. "Ryan," she said, her voice soft but steady, "do you ever think about the future? About us?" Ryan turned to her, his gaze thoughtful. He had been thinking about that a lot, but he hadn't quite found the right words. "I do," he said quietly, his voice tinged with honesty. "I think about it all the time. But the truth is, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want you in it. Emily felt a flutter in her chest. She had been so afraid of getting hurt, so afraid of moving too fast, but hearing him say that made her heart skip a beat. I want that too, she whispered. But I'm still scared, Ryan. I'm scared of what might happen, of opening up completely. I've been on my own for so long, and letting someone in, it's not easy. Ryan gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing over her cheek. I know, Emily, he said softly. I know it's hard, but we don't have to have it all figured out right now. We just have to keep moving forward together, one step at a time. Emily looked into his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. She wasn't alone anymore, and she wasn't afraid to take that next step to build a future with someone who truly cared for her. It wasn't going to be easy, but nothing worth having ever was. And as Ryan held her close, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The world outside may have been uncertain, but in that moment, all that mattered was the warmth between them, the love they had found, and the future they would build side by side.